And malnutrition in India is not necessarily caused by a lack of food, but it's a lack of proper nutrition, a lack of micronutrients. And so you see children who may have yellowing hair and bloated stomachs, and that's not all due to just not having enough to eat, but not eating the right things. And so, the kids aren't getting the right source. So, Indian food is, of course, some of the most nutritious food you can get. Dal, rice, sabzi, roti is a complete meal. Add some dahi in there, and you have all the major food groups. And so actually, if Indian food is eaten in the right way, it can be perfectly fine. Of course, because it's vegetarian, people need to make sure that they're getting enough proteins from other sources. So you have to consciously eat more. But that's not really what the problem is. The problem more is the fact of not having enough of those nutritious foods. So oftentimes we'll see kids who are, a lot of the problems is kids under 2 years old. And with those kids, a lot of the problems have to actually do with breastfeeding. Oftentimes there's all of these myths surrounding breastfeeding. And so the mothers won't start breastfeeding for maybe 1 or 2 days. Or 3 or 4 days after the delivery. And there's tons of experience and literature around the world showing that one of the most important public health kind of interventions is breastfeeding within the first 1 hour, 1-2 hours. But in India, oftentimes that doesn't happen, especially in the villages and some of these tribal communities, for 3-4 days. And so already the kid so by not getting colostrum, the kid's kind of starting behind. And then we see that the families will not breastfeed, the mothers not breastfeed enough, maybe just 2 or 3 times a day, instead of, exclusively for, 8 times a day. And then we'll see actually that at 6 months, when a child should, still be breastfeeding, but start weaning and start on other foods, they will keep just breastfeeding the child up until maybe 1 year. And so the child will not be getting proper complementary foods as they are, getting older. So kind of a lot of the problems with malnutrition start kind of at that age, between 6 months to 2 years old. And then from there, oftentimes it's just the wrong food choices. Where mom and dad will be busy in the field all day. They won't have time to cook, so they'll go out and they'll buy the kid a packet of biscuits. And they'll give the kid biscuits, where biscuits have no nutritional value. And they're actually more expensive than just buying some dal and rice. And so that's actually the same problem, we see in my country, in the U.S., where we actually have an overweight problem. There's tons of children who are obese. And it's the same type of problem. Mom and dad are too busy working all day. They buy the kids some McDonald's, or some fried food, and then the kids become unhealthy that way. And so it's, completely different sides of the spectrum. But it's the idea that a home-cooked meal can be cheaper and have more nutritional value if it's the right thing. And then we also see a lot of times in the villages with malnutrition is that, seasonally, let's say in the summer, once the corn starts to come in, we'll see kids that only eat makka roti. That's it. Makka roti, breakfast, lunch, dinner, that's it. And while, makka roti is delicious, it's one of my favorites, it doesn't really have very much micronutrients in it. It's pretty much just starch. And so when kids are just eating that, they're not getting the essential vitamins and minerals that they would get from having more dal and some fruit and some sabzi. And so really what India's advantage is yes, India has rates of malnutrition as high as some areas in Africa, but India doesn't have the same causes, the same problems as, say, malnutrition in Somalia. Well, so in India, we have the resources. We have Indian food, which is some of the most nutritious food. India is an agricultural exporter. So you do have the possibilities of having enough food. But what it comes down to are problems and kind of connections. So we have government programs. We have ICBS. We have public distribution system, which is the largest public distribution system in the world. We have the midday meal program. We have all of these really well-conceived and well-planned government programs to be able to combat malnutrition, but somehow malnutrition still persists. And that's a problem of connection, not necessarily a lack of resources. India has the full capacity of ending malnutrition, but it's about, connecting those dots, about connecting communities to the resources available. And so what we've seen is that, in a lot of the villages, it comes down to it comes down to knowledge about access, and knowledge about proper young child feeding practices. So it's about talking to mothers about first talking to pregnant women about proper nutrition during pregnancy, then talking to them about breastfeeding within the first hour, then talking to them about proper exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, then talking about what kind of foods to give a child after 6 months during the complementary feeding stage, then talking about kind of what are the proper foods to give a kid as the child starts to grow. And then also we have to then discuss, how to keep a child hygienic and how to have sanitary conditions so that infections don't show up, which, then again causes malnutrition. Another large cause of malnutrition is infection, is diarrhea, is pneumonia, is kind of all these different illnesses that have a side effect of malnutrition. And so kind of second to that education point is also making sure that kids are fully vaccinated, that ORS is available, so if a kid does get diarrhea, we can stop the cycle and get them rehydrated, and that families know when are the times to bring a kid to the hospital, what are the warning signs, and can keep the child healthy.